Hi, everyone out there in the world of YouTube, or wherever it is you may be just checking out a clip. And if it's on another platform, I hope you make your way over to YouTube and watch the full video. Or if you're already on YouTube and listening to this intro, watch the full video because you won't be disappointed. Of course, I always say that, and I know it's true because you'll be motivated and inspired to conquer the world, especially after listening to this full interview with my special guest. And you know what that means, that she's a special guest. However, let me say, my name is Jacqueline Anderson, and I'm back, you're back, we're all back. So thank you for tuning in, checking out the channel. So of course, before I say like, subscribe, or share, why don't you leave a comment? I'd appreciate it. So, but back to my guest today. Yeah, she's a special guest. Not only is she a certified public accountant, she's an expert. She's a professor. She's all things accounting. She knows it all. Having CPA behind her name wasn't enough. Like I said, she is also a professor at Cal State LA, which is California State University, Los Angeles. My special guest today is Dr. Porschia Nkansa. Thank you.
Hi, everyone.
Thank you for being willing to share your experience and tell us all about the accounting world from the, I guess, academic perspective and being an expert in your field. So again, thank you for saying yes to this interview. We'll get started. So what is the name on your birth certificate?
The name on my birth certificate, well, it was Portia Courtney Thomas Quinn, or I guess it still is.
Okay.
I think I updated everything when I got married, probably besides my birth certificate. So, but my new married name is Porschia Nkansa.
All right.
The birth certificate should be Portia Courtney Thomas Quinn. So it was long name.
Along with all the other credentials you have now. That's great. So where are you from?
I'm from Chicago, Illinois, the West Side. So I'm a proud West Sider.
Oh, okay. And now where are you? And what state do you reside now?
So now I live in California, South Pasadena, which is near the Cal State Los Angeles campus.
Gotcha. Okay. So since you are a certified public accountant, what state were you initially licensed? And did you transfer your license?
Illinois.
Gotcha.
So I'm actually registered. So I did registered in Illinois, and then I transferred it to California.
Gotcha. Okay, so do you still have your state issued ID number or know it by heart? Because of course.
No, I don't, but I do keep this handy. I keep my certificate on my desk, and see that's Portia C. Thomas Quinn. So that was before I was married.
Right. Okay. So like I said, that wasn't enough. She's also a doctor in accounting. That is fantastic. Wow. So what colleges and universities did you attend?
So for my undergrad degree, I attended DePaul University in Chicago. So I have a Bachelor of Science in Accountancy from DePaul. And then for my PhD, I went to the University of Memphis. So I skipped the master's. I don't have a master's, but I got all of my credits to sit for the CPA exam in undergrad.
You did? Wow. So at that time, or at DePaul, did it make sense to go ahead and pursue the graduate degree? Did you have enough hours, or you knew you were going straight into your doctorate program and didn't have any time to waste on that?
I just didn't like student loan debt. And so when I was at DePaul, I had applied for about like $60,000 in scholarships, and I stayed at home, so I didn't have to pay for like room and board, but I was very conscious about minimizing my student loan debt. And so that was one of the reasons why I decided not to get a master's degree, because I didn't want to incur more debt. And so I don't know, maybe around like junior or junior or senior year, I was in NABA. And I'm not sure like when it sparked into my mind just to kind of get all the credit hours out of the way in undergrad. But yeah, I was on a mission when I was in undergrad just to get them all, because DePaul is on the quarter system. Okay. So I knew that I would probably have a lot of credits anyway. But I started doing, so at DePaul, we had like winter intersession. So I started taking like classes in the winter intersession. And I had to take like a lab class, a science class at the community college. So I went to Harold Washington, and that credit transferred over, and it came out to be like more credits than what it was just if it was just on the semester system because we were in quarters. So I just decided to get all of my hours out of the way in undergrad. And for us, for some classes at DePaul, they were worth 2 credits. So I would take, that little extra class. I didn't want to take too many classes. So sometimes I took like 5 classes. I think one time I took 6. But I knew that was probably the best time to go ahead and get my credit hours since I wasn't really I didn't have to work, but I was working like part-time, but I knew that it would be probably the time of my life where I had more time to get the credits, done before I went to work. So that's why I just decided to do it in undergrad to get all the hours.
So you knew that you were headed towards the CPA exam after undergrad. That was the goal.
Yeah, in undergrad, yeah. And it was probably just from so I was involved in the National Association of Black Accountants, the DePaul chapter. And then I was also very active with the Illinois CPA Society. So it was probably just, my interactions with going to like their events and meeting the professionals where it kind of, I got the idea that, I should just get the credit hours done in undergrad. So that's probably where I came up with the idea.
Just go ahead.
My involvement in the student organizations and in the Illinois CPA Society as a student member.
Okay, so your undergrad degree is in accounting?
Yeah, it's in accounting, and I minored in communication, but yeah, it's in accounting.
When you first went off to college, was CPA your goal at that point when you chose accounting as your major?
I actually went into undergrad with a finance major. So just my mom owned like a convenience store when I was younger. So I would be in her store, like helping her do stuff and just kind of observing things. And I think it was sort of like in a low income area in Chicago. So I think just from my observations of seeing her with these financial skills, I wanted to give back to my community and like seeing sort of like how, I don't want to say like downtrodden, but it just seemed that financial skills are lacking in our community, or even just kind of the thought, because people don't really like math. And so I think they think the connection with like math and finance. And so then it's like anything with numbers, it's like, no, I don't want to do.
Right.
So I went into DePaul with the aspiration of being a financial planner. And so I majored in finance, but then, like you take all these, your intro courses in the different majors. So that first accounting class, I had 2 accounting classes, the same professor, the first 2. And I just loved her so much, and I loved the class. I loved accounting so much, and I didn't really like my finance class. So I ended up switching my major to accounting.
Gotcha. Okay. So do you remember what year it was or how old you were when you became a CPA?
Oh, yeah. Yeah, I remember that. Yeah, I don't know which one I want to tell.
Right. That's why I framed it that way, because I know some people are a little reluctant because I usually ask, how old are you?
Yeah.
If you don't mind, we can do the math either way. So you say how old you are now. Just to give us an idea.
I was 25.
Okay.
I was 25 when I found out that I had passed that last part of the CPA exam.
Okay. And how long did it take you, that journey of going through that 4-part exam?
So I guess I could say I had 2 journeys. So my first one was right after undergrad. I had interned at KPMG for like 2 summers, and I knew I was going to accept a full-time offer in tax.
Okay.
So it was going to be in January though, and I graduated in June. So I just figured I can get all parts of the CPA exam out of the way because, I had some professionals say, well, you want to do the exam before you start working because you'll be working a lot. And so I just had in my mind that I was going to pass the CPA exam in like 4 months. And I said I was going to take 1 part a month. And mind you, I was a very good student in undergrad. Like I had a high GPA. And so I didn't really take studying that seriously for the exam. I had, through NABA, I had received a GLIME review prep for the exam. So I was using that in addition to KPMG bought a Becker. So I had like Glyme. I think the first time around I just used Glyme, but I was trying to take a part each month, and it just, I was not successful at all. I failed them all. At some point, like probably the first one, I figured I was going to pass. So I completely underestimated the exam because I thought I was smart and I thought I didn't need that much time to study. So I took like the first part and I didn't pass. And like throughout the summer, I just knew I wasn't really ready. But the first part humbled me for sure, but I felt like I had scheduled them already. So I felt like I should go ahead and just take it, even though I wasn't prepared, just to condition myself because I had never taken like a 4-hour exam before. So I figured even though I wasn't quite prepared, that I would still take it just to kind of see how it was. But I failed them all. I think the highest score I received at that time, like from the 4 parts, was a 51%. And so then I started working. Didn't have time to study because I started in busy season. And so then I ended up saying, I didn't really like tax as much as I thought I would. So I only ended up staying for like a year. But after I left, I said I was just going to focus on the CPA exam. Just because I had the time to study. I had saved up a lot of money because I was working all the time and I wasn't spending money and I was still at home. So I said I would just focus on the exam. So then I started like really studying for sure. And I had a mentor at KPMG who said she had passed them all her first try. And she said her approach was just, she just committed 6 to 8 months of her life to it. And so looking at it that way, I guess it was like a shorter time frame. And so that allowed her to stay focused on studying. But honestly, when I graduated, like I was partying. Like I was just happy to be done with school. I was partying and I wasn't really as focused on studying, and I still assumed that I would pass just because I was smart. And so just from having her feedback by saying, you know, just say it's 6 to 8 months of your life, you'll get the time back. So that kind of helped me. It changed my mind frame going into it the second time where I was more serious about studying. So I started out studying, but I got bored just at home studying, and this time I was using Becker. What I can say about Glyme was for Glyme, some of the questions I saw the exact same questions on the exam. So I appreciated Glyme for that. But then I started using Becker because my Glyme had probably expired. So then I started studying at home, but I was bored. So I said, well, let me take like a part-time temporary position or something just so I could be working a little bit, but work isn't as stressful so I could still focus on studies. So I ended up finding like a temporary part-time job where I would study after work. I would stay after work. It was quiet. People had left. And so I would stay after work and study.
Gotcha.
But that was the second go round. And the second go round, it ended up taking me. So I took FAR the first time, and this is, mind you, I'm serious. Like I'm in it to win now. I had a 73. I was so disappointed, like so heartbroken. So I had to like get myself back together, and then I took another part. I took audit next, and I passed. I was too down to take FAR again right away. So I took audit and I passed. And FAR, mind you, I got a 73. So I knew I was close, but it was just very heartbreaking because I was like, I'm serious now. Like, and really, like 2 points, you can 2 points. So then I took audit and I passed. So I think that kind of gave me more momentum. So overall, the second time, it took me about like 17 months.
Gotcha. Well, you were mentioning the first time you had scheduled all 4 parts at one time.
Yeah, because I just, you know, I thought I was smart. I thought I would pass. I had the review stuff. And I think because, you know, I knew I was going to start working, there was really I couldn't move stuff. Like I just felt like I had to get it all done before I started working. So that's why I went ahead and just accepted it as like I scheduled it. So I'm just going to suck it up. And it was really a learning lesson for me just to kind of humble myself and to focus. Like it's not an easy exam just because you're smart. And I don't know, these people who get like over 90s on and they pass it the first time, like kudos to them.
Right.
I don't have that brain power.
Like, what are
But
they on? What are they eating?
yeah, I don't know what kind of that, maybe they're just like they're geniuses. So, or maybe they were too more dedicated with their studies. But yeah, it was a learning lesson for me to, if you really want something, you have to work for it, and you
Right.
can't be like doing it halfway.
Okay. So would you advise that you schedule them as you go versus just right off the top, back
For
to
sure.
back?
Yeah, I would say you pass, schedule one, see your results. And that's kind of my approach the second time. Yeah, that was my approach. Just kind of pace yourself a little more. Don't try to rush it.
Gotcha. So you mentioned working at KPMG. Was it in tax? Was that the area?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it
Is
was
it,
tax.
did you choose that lane or you someone
Mhm.
fell into that?
Yeah, so for tax, my first exposure with taxes was at DePaul. We had it, some kind of way I became connected to. It was called the Center for Economic Progress. So it's kind of like VITA, which is more popular now.
Okay.
But there it was, they had partnered with this organization called the Center for Economic Progress, and they do income taxes for low income families. So I was doing that like in my community, sort of near where I lived. So that was my first exposure to tax, and I liked that experience. And then I had interned at TransUnion, the credit reporting agency. I
Okay.
interned there as a tax intern, and I liked my experience there. So because I had those two like positive experiences with tax, working doing taxes, that's why I chose tax, going to KPMG. But I should have known it wasn't for me because
Why is that?
those were my worst performing accounting classes. So like one of the tax classes, I actually took it in the summer, and I got like a C minus, and so I had to take it over. And then this other class, I ended up passing, but it was rough, and so that should have been my signal from just taking classes. But you see, I felt like because I had the work experience
Okay.
that I was good. But yeah, but going back to do it, and I think particularly because at KPMG it was a specialized tax, it was partnerships. And so for the Center for Economic Progress, the low income families, that was individual taxes. And then for TransUnion, it was an LLC, a limited liability corporation, so it was a different kind of tax. But
Okay.
then I just didn't like the partnership tax stuff, and I had never taken the class on that. So yeah, I just didn't. It wasn't for me.
Okay. But would you say that's your area of expertise or
No,
specialty
not at all.
in the accounting field?
My area of expertise in accounting is I worked for a good amount of time in like internal audit, but now as far as teaching, it's financial accounting.
Gotcha. Okay, so when you were working, I guess, out in the real world with some of us, after undergrad, you talked about KPMG. Did you work in any other like industry, government, or it was public accounting?
So after KPMG, after public accounting, I went to the not-for-profit. It was a real estate management company or association. So it was a real estate management association. So it was not for profit. And then while I was there, because I wanted better work-life balance, I was applying for government jobs.
Okay.
So I applied for like a job with the IRS. And then I think I had tried like the Department of Justice. And then there was Cook County, which is like a local government in Chicago, Cook County. And so I applied for jobs there. And so I interviewed with IRS and Cook County, and I ended up getting the job at Cook County because, I passed audit the first time. So I kind of took that as a sign that, maybe audit is for me as opposed to tax. So that's why I started like applying for like auditor jobs. And yeah, this one was it was internal audit for the government.
Okay.
So I
Gotcha.
worked there for almost 3 years.
Gotcha. Okay. So back to the exams, and he's like you said it was like 2 times. Did you encounter any like life issues or obstacles along the way besides those that may have been self-imposed by just buckling down and struggling, or did you have curveballs come at you just unexpected?
No, I didn't have any curveballs. What I can say is so I had a friend who was at the Paul with me too, and she was an accounting major, and she actually was passing parts and she had a child. And so in my mind, I was like, what is wrong with you? Like she's responsible for another life. Like you need, why can't you pass the exam too? So that's kind of another thing that kind of put things into perspective for me, that it was like the prime time for me to be studying because I didn't have really any distractions beside myself.
Oh, because that's a blessing.
Yeah, yeah. So that's why I was like, to myself, I'm like, Portia, like you need to get it together.
No
So that,
excuses.
yeah, because I know I was capable, like I was a good
Mhm.
student. I know how to study. But it was just, I think it was a part of like, you know how they say, like now the advice you get is that you should just study, keep studying for the exam. So I always recommend to students just, party for a little bit after you graduate. But I guess because that muscle, like I was just tired of using my brain. And so then I was like in party mode, and
Okay.
it was just hard to get back into like work, student, study mode. So
Yeah,
that was my only obstacle, just motivated myself.
you concentrate on that,
Yeah,
right?
to
You
get
want to live
serious.
life.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's
Because
pretty
I didn't
good.
have any like any major life things going on. I didn't have any distractions or anything besides me.
And taking the exam fees, was that an issue for you financially? Did you have any problems with that? Or were some of your employers willing to reimburse you along the way?
So at KPMG there was like, if you passed them all in a certain amount of time, you would get the incentive, but I couldn't study while I was working because we were so busy, and I'm not a good multitasker. Like
Mhm,
I have to be focused on like one major thing at a time. So
mhm.
the people who I was working with, they were studying for the CPA exam still too, and they were passing parts, but it just wasn't, it wasn't in my ability. um so no, the I was paying for myself.
Okay.
But that was a factor the second time around because it's like, I'm paying $200 every time. So it was like, come on, like you need to get serious about this because it's costing you. Not only is it like mentally exhausting, it's a little financial draining too.
Right. And time, right?
Yeah, time. So
Losing
it's
your mind,
mental,
losing time out the day.
intellectual,
I'm sure people
financial,
listening to this
all of the above.
like, sacrifice all the way around, right?
All the way around.
My goodness, it is a lot. So at what point in this journey in the classroom, educationally and professionally, did you decide I want to pursue a PhD and be an expert doctor of accounting?
That was from undergrad. So when I was at DePaul, I became a supplemental instruction leader. That was my part-time job. I think like in the last 2 years I was in school. And so it entailed me, so what I had to do was because it's like specialized tutoring. And it was for the hard accounting classes, like the classes that people were struggling with the most. So
Mhm.
I was assigned to the intermediate, or no, intro. So intro to financial accounting. So I would have to go and sit in on the class, and then I would have to make announcements to the class. So I had my certain classes. So I had a certain class I would sit in on every quarter, and I would make an announcement to the class that I was doing these tutoring sessions outside of class. But I was sitting in the class just to kind of, see how the professor was teaching the material. And so then I announced to the students in there that I had these specialized tutoring sessions, and I was able to do my own schedule. And then they were like in the library and stuff. So I arranged my own schedule, and then I was provided with like the answer key to the textbook. So I was sort of like a little mini professor because I would go to the class And then I would have my little tutoring sessions with like office hours. And then I was able to, do my own schedule. So it was really flexible and I enjoyed it. And then also is when I realized that I had this gift for explaining the accounting material. So most of the students that came to my sessions were like non-accounting majors who, we all have to take like those classes. And so most of them were non-accounting majors, mostly like marketing and management. So I just realized that I had this special gift of, breaking the material down for them in a way that they could understand. And so from that experience, that's how I knew eventually that I would want to be a professor. But I also know that as a student, you value in the classroom when your professor says they have work experience because you feel that they can really speak to what they're teaching. So that's why I knew I wanted to be a professor, but I knew I wanted work experience. So at least like 5 years of work experience before going back for my PhD. And also knowing that when you pursue your PhD, that you probably won't be getting paid or you get like a really low stipend.
Mm-hmm.
So that was also why I decided to work for about 5 years so that I can save money too, to be ready to go back to school.
Okay. So in that 5-year period, that interim between undergrad and going in the PhD program, did you find that your salary automatically increased once you did become a CPA?
No, so that's an interesting thing. So I started at KPMG, right? So, the public accounting firms are known for paying a lot more, right? And so I actually ended up taking a pay cut to go when I went to the government because I was willing to take it because it was better work-life balance. And I actually ended up passing my last CPA exam when I started at Cook County. So I was willing to take the pay cut because I knew that I wouldn't be at work all the time. And I knew it would be like a less stressful environment. So I actually took a pay cut. Now fast forward to so after the PhD, now I make more money. But there was some time, it took me time to get the PhD. But yeah, from being in public accounting, going to the government, I took a pay cut.
Gotcha. Okay, you were willing to accept that, or even though you weren't fully licensed or hadn't passed the last part, did your employer know that you were planning or in the process of becoming a CPA and maybe a promotion would be in your future?
So my boss knew because right when I started, I probably told them that during the interview process, and then like right when I started, I found out I had failed reg. So I just kind of let her know like I'm gonna have to take this exam again, because that was kind of like one of I guess the reasons they hired me too was because they knew they would have a CPA. But so that's why I was very like transparent with her about my process, or progress. But yeah, I was willing. No, because the way Cook County it's not like the federal government. Maybe in the federal government, I know they have like, levels, different levels where you get pay raises. But at the time too, I think it may have been around like the economy wasn't doing that great either.
Okay.
And so actually the people who were hired before us, they had a lot of pay increases. But when we came, because two other auditors joined me too, like I was the first one and they hired 2 more. So it just seems like when we came, like the pay increases were stagnant.
Gosh. Okay. So now, since you're a professor, what's the difference, or your opinion? Is there any hierarchy or more respect or prestige between having your PhD or a CPA?
I think it's subjective. Of course, there's prestige that comes with being like a PhD, but then it could be like, I guess some people like, well, what are you researching in accounting, right? But we do have our, we have our profession.
Gonna be too,
Yes,
always.
okay, you're not a medical doctor, but you PhD's the research. So like, but what do you research in accounting? So, but I do think, for sure, for like other African Americans, like my African American students, they see it as a thing of prestige. And I have a mentee, and she's always, complimenting me on my accomplishments. But yeah, so it's just kind of subjective. But for sure, having a PhD, there's some prestige. But then I think with having it in accounting, it's like a little bit like, oh, well, what do you, besides being a professor, like, well, what do you do with that?